Please leave a comment where you are watching from. I've been in football most of my life. Not just as a job, but as a language, the way I understood people, moments, even myself. Now I coach. Not at some big-name club, not even in the UK anymore. These days, I live in a small village outside Marbella, coaching teenagers at a private academy with more money than direction. It's a gig. Keeps me in the game, keeps me sane. Or at least it did. Back in the day, I played midfield for Grays Athletic, tried my luck in Scotland, bounced around lower leagues like a pinball. I was good enough to get noticed, not good enough to stay noticed. A knee injury ended my run earlier than I'd have liked. Standard story. But coaching became something else. It filled the void, gave all that experience a second life. This story isn't about how I got here. It's about what happened one April. A spring that started like any other and ended with me questioning everything. Not just about football, but about time, memory, and what waits on the edge of the pitch when the lights go out. The academy is called La Finca. Fancy name for what is basically a converted golf resort turned training ground. Rows of white stucco buildings, palm trees lined up like soldiers, and a main pitch that glows under floodlights like a spaceship landing pad. You could tell money was thrown at it. Too much, maybe. But it lacked soul. You know what I mean? No history in the walls. Just polish. I arrived on a 2-month contract to cover for a young coach who'd taken emergency leave. No one told me why. Just a vague family matters and a handshake. That should have been my first clue something wasn't right. But I didn't think much of it. I was just happy to be near the sea, with a bit of sun on my back. The boys were decent. Aged 14 to 18. Multinational mix, some from Morocco, Sweden, even Russia. A few had real talent, the kind that makes you lean forward during drills. But there was a weird tension in the group. Not disrespect, more like caution. Especially around one part of the pitch. Top right corner, just near the faded advertising boards. They never trained there. Whenever I split them up into drills, that area would stay clear. Balls would roll toward it, and nobody would chase after them. Not once. I started picking up on it around my 3rd day. I asked one of the younger lads, quiet French kid named Lucien, why they avoided that side. He just shrugged and said, "That's where he stands." I thought he was joking. I even laughed. "Who?" I asked. Lucien didn't answer. Just walked away. That night, I watched training footage from the CCTV the Academy uses for performance analysis. It's standard, wide-angle cams recording every session from multiple angles. It helps for reviewing tactics. I scrubbed through the footage from earlier that day, just out of curiosity, watching the boys do passing drills. Then I saw it. For a single frame, maybe 2, just at the edge of the camera's view, right near the advertising boards, there was a figure. Blurred. Distant. But clear enough. White top. White boots. Hands at his sides, just standing. Watching. I paused it. Rewound. Frame by frame. Gone. The figure flickered in, then vanished. Like a glitch. But it didn't look digital. It looked real. Still, I figured it was a player who'd wandered into frame earlier, maybe overlapping footage. No big deal. I deleted it and went to bed. But that night, I dreamed of running. Chasing the ball toward that same corner. The grass pulled at my feet, heavy like mud. And just before I reached it, I saw a man, same white boots, motionless, raising a hand to shush me. I woke up sweating, heart racing. 3:13 a.m. I laughed it off. It was stress. Jet lag. I hadn't coached full-time in months, and now I was back in the thick of it, trying to connect with kids half my age. It made sense that my brain was processing things weirdly. Right? The days went on. The weather got warmer. The boys kept improving. But the feeling didn't go away. They always avoided that corner. Even when I deliberately set up drills that required full pitch coverage, they'd find excuses to keep clear. Then one Thursday in early April, something changed. We were doing a small-sided game. I split the group into 2 teams and told them to play full pitch. I was deliberately firm about it, hoping to break the weird superstition. Things were going fine, fast, clean football, until one of the strikers, a Spanish lad named Javi, made a run toward that corner chasing a long pass. He hesitated, slowed, then suddenly screamed and collapsed. I ran over, thinking he'd twisted an ankle or worse. But he wasn't clutching his leg. He was just sitting there, shaking, eyes wide. Pale. "There's someone there," he yelled, pointing behind me. He was right there. He was watching me. I looked. Nothing. Just grass and old boards with faded logos. but I'll never forget the look in his eyes. He wasn't acting. I helped him up, gave him water, tried to calm the others down. But training was over. They wouldn't go near the ball again until I moved the game to the other half of the pitch. I was pissed off, but underneath that, I was scared. That night, I checked the footage again. And there he was. Only this time, he wasn't in the corner. He was closer. Let me pause here and say, I don't believe in ghosts. Not the floating bedsheet kind, not the Hollywood stuff. I believe in memory, in trauma, in places holding on to emotions like old clothes in a forgotten drawer. But what I saw wasn't emotion. It was a man, same figure, closer to the midfield line. White boots, head tilted slightly, watching. Only now I could see more. His face, blank, like it had been scraped clean. Not bloody, just gone. Smooth. I showed it to one of the assistant coaches, a local guy named Matteo. I didn't frame it as anything supernatural. I just said, "Hey, do you recognize this player?" He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he whispered, "Not again." I asked him what he meant. He hesitated. Then he told me a story. Years ago, maybe 10, there was a boy at the academy. Real talent. Left-footed, fast as hell. He was due to sign with a top-tier youth program in Seville. But he died. On the pitch. Heart failure. Sudden. No warning. He collapsed in the top right corner during a sprint drill. Right there. Paramedics said it was an undiagnosed defect. Nothing could have been done. The academy shut down for a month. When it reopened, weird things started happening. Cameras glitching. Balls rolling on their own. Players complaining of dizziness near that corner. A coach saw someone standing there one night after training. Quit the next day. His name was Alvaro. He wore white boots. I sat there in silence. Matteo leaned closer, voice quiet. They say he's still running drills. Waiting to be subbed back in. I stopped watching the tapes after that. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop seeing him, even in broad daylight. A flicker on the edge of the pitch. A flash of white boots in the corner of my eye. The boys knew. They all knew. Some of them wouldn't even look in that direction anymore. One kid, Alexei, tough Russian defender, refused to practice at all one day. Just stood by the benches and muttered in his own language, crossing himself like we were in a church. April 12th, our keeper passed out cold after saving a shot that veered wide, toward that corner. When he woke up, the first thing he said was, "I saw him. He's coming closer." By mid-April, the academy didn't feel like a place for football anymore. It felt like a waiting room. Not for a game. For something else. I stopped splitting the boys into teams. I stopped pushing them into full-pitch drills. I started keeping things compact, 1/3 drills, corner cones nowhere near the top right. Just enough to keep the illusion going. That we were still doing something normal. That we weren't avoiding a dead boy in white boots. It was cowardly, but it kept things calm. For a while. On April 21st, everything unraveled. We were doing light pre-match prep, half-pitch passing patterns, light jogs. The air was thick that day, the kind of spring humidity that makes your skin feel like paper. And then a ball rolled free. Javi again. Poor kid couldn't catch a break. His pass went long. It curved, slow and elegant, into the corner. The dead one. The quiet part of the pitch that had been untouched for weeks. Everyone stopped. He looked at me. I looked at him. I should have told him to leave it. I should have jogged over, picked it up myself, laughed it off. But I didn't. I nodded. "Go on." He jogged. Hesitant. Eyes down. Each step slower than the last. And then he froze. Mid-stride. I'll never forget his face. The way it went pale. Lips trembling. He raised a shaking hand and pointed, toward the boards. Toward the shadow standing just beyond the sunlight. White boots. Alvaro. Everything happened so fast after that. Javi collapsed. Screaming. Not like before. This was primal, terrified, like something inside him was being pulled out. He started clawing at the grass, as if trying to crawl away from something none of us could see. The boys panicked. One ran. Another cried. I sprinted over, grabbed Javi by the shoulders. He was cold. His mouth kept repeating something. Over and over. At first I thought it was Spanish. Then I realized it wasn't even words. Just a rhythm, like counting under his breath. Tick, 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 tick. I looked up. And there he was. Closer than ever. Alvaro stood inside the pitch, one foot barely touching the white line. His head tilted, smooth face angled toward Javi. Watching. No expression, no malice. Just waiting. The academy shut down that day. No more sessions. No more drills. Parents were called. Flights were booked. Most of the boys were gone by nightfall. I stayed. Don't ask me why. Part of me felt like I owed it to them. Or maybe to Alvaro. Like if I didn't do something, if I didn't finish something, he'd never stop. That night, I went to the pitch alone. Floodlights off. Only moonlight and the buzzing of insects. I stood at the halfway line, facing the corner. That corner. I held a match ball under my arm. And I waited. At first, there was nothing. Just wind and the rustle of palm leaves. Then I saw him. He didn't walk. He appeared. Like he'd always been there. Alvaro. Same white boots. Same dead stillness. But this time he looked younger. Smaller. Less blurred. Less hollow. I kicked the ball to him. It rolled to his feet. He didn't move. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. Your sub's ready, son. He didn't react. Then he looked behind him. There was no one there. Just the empty boards. But he kept staring. And in that moment, I understood. He wasn't waiting for me. He was waiting for permission. He was still stuck in that moment. Still waiting to come back on. For a whistle. A signal. Something he never got. I raised my hand. I nodded. You're in. And then he turned. Walked slowly to the sideline. Stopped just shy of the line. Looked at me one last time. And vanished. No flash. No scream. No wind. Just gone. The next morning, the academy grounds were quiet. I checked the cameras. Nothing strange. I asked Mateo to join me for one last training review, just to be sure. We watched the footage together. Nothing. No flickers. No static. No Alvaro. The corner was just a corner again. The boys returned the following week. The ones who hadn't transferred out. They joked again. Smiled again. Even Javi seemed lighter. Like he'd finally woken from something heavy. And for the first time, I let them run full pitch. And they did. No fear. No hesitation. Someone even scored in that corner. I left La Finca 2 weeks later. My contract ended. No extensions. Mateo asked if I'd come back next year. I said no. But here's the strange thing. Before I left, I opened one of the old storage closets behind the equipment room. One I hadn't touched since I arrived. There, on the top shelf, was an old academy jersey. Number 8. Next to it, a pair of white boots. Worn. Still with grass in the studs. And on the wall, written in faded marker, barely visible above the rack. Ready when you are, coach. You ever notice how April Fool's Day always brings out the worst ideas? I mean, yeah, pranks can be fun when you're 12 and sticking ketchup packets under toilet seats. But somewhere along the line, people started thinking it was clever to fake proposals, fake deaths, fake hauntings. The day turned into this weird mix of laughter and low-key emotional terrorism. I should know. I used to be one of those people. For the last 5 years, I'd run a podcast and YouTube channel called Bitter Laughs, a mix of dark humor, weird internet lore, and live stunts. Think Jackass meets creepypasta. My co-host, Darren, and I had made a name pulling pranks on each other that slowly veered into horror territory. Haunted house sleepovers, midnight Ouija games, fake urban legends we'd act out in the woods. It was all harmless. Until April 1st, last year. That was the night I realized that sometimes, when you joke about something long enough, it starts to joke back. The plan was simple. We were going to spend the night at a rundown roadside motel on the outskirts of Vermont, the Green Pines Inn. It hadn't had a Yelp review since 2017. That's how perfect it was. The prank? Make Darren think it was haunted. I'd spent weeks setting it up. Pre-recorded audio of footsteps. Whispers. An old woman's voice repeating, "Get out." I even paid a college drama major $50 to dress in a Victorian dress and peek through the motel window at 2 a.m. Stupid, right? But hilarious. The kicker was this: we'd be live streaming the whole night. No cuts. No edits. Just raw terror. Darren had no idea. He thought we were filming a normal late-night Q&A episode with some light, creepy ambience for the mood. He didn't even know we were headed to a motel until we pulled in. We arrived around 9 p.m. The place looked like it had been carved out of a horror movie. Faded green paint, flickering neon sign with half the letters dead, and a front desk with no one behind it. We rang the bell for 10 minutes before some guy shuffled out from the back in pajamas and a Red Sox cap. Didn't even ask for ID. Just gave us the key to room 9. Room 9. Remember that. The air inside was stale. It smelled like mildew and old socks. The wallpaper was peeling in places. The carpet was stained in others. One of the bedside lamps flickered constantly, like it was trying to tell us something in Morse code. Perfect. We set up the gear, 2 cameras, ring light, audio recorders. By 10:30 p.m., we were live. It started off exactly like we wanted. Jokes, banter, reading viewer comments, a few spooky tales from Reddit to warm things up. Then, right on schedule, the first event. At 11:15 p.m., while Darren was mid-sentence, a soft tapping sound started on the wall behind him. 3 knocks. Then silence. He turned, confused. "You hear that?" he asked. I shrugged. "Old building. Could be pipes." He nodded, laughed nervously, and moved on. 30 minutes later, a soft whisper, barely audible, came through the mic. I saw the live chat explode. "OMG, who said that?" Someone said, "Get out." Rewind to 11:48. I swear that wasn't either of them. Darren was starting to sweat. He kept checking the window, asking if I'd seen someone outside. I hadn't. Or at least, I wasn't supposed to have. But here's where it gets tricky. The next event wasn't mine. At 12:17 a.m., the door to the bathroom creaked open by itself. Now I know what you're thinking, old doors, loose hinges, whatever. But I had rigged that door to stay closed. I'd used a tiny wedge to keep it shut unless physically opened. And no one, not even our actor, was in the room yet. Darren stood up, stared at the door. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice lower now. Less showman, more human. I leaned into the bit. "Maybe it's the ghost of room 9. He didn't laugh. Neither did the chat. At 1:03 a.m., the window, the one I told the actor to approach, started rattling. I grinned. Showtime. But when I turned to look, there was no one there. Just empty glass. No dress. No face. No nothing. I glanced at my phone to message the actor, maybe tell her to go again. No signal. No Wi-Fi. The stream was still going. I could see the camera's live indicator, but we weren't connected to anything. The router was blinking red. Darren stood up, pacing now. "Dude, I think we need to shut this down. I'm not feeling good about this." I tried to calm him, told him it was all just atmosphere. But then the lights cut out. Dark. Just pitch, suffocating black. Our ring light was on battery. It stayed on, casting this pale circle around us, but everything beyond that was swallowed in shadow. That's when the breathing started. Heavy. Wet. Just outside the ring light's reach. Coming from the bathroom. Darren was shaking. I could see it in his silhouette. "Okay, this isn't funny anymore. I didn't sign up for this." "Neither did I, mate. This wasn't the prank." I took a step toward the bathroom, heart pounding. That's when I saw the figure. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't anyone I'd hired. Tall. Slouched. Skin like wet paper, sagging off the face. Hollow eyes. Its mouth hung open, jaw slack like it had forgotten how to close it. It stood in the bathroom doorway, inches from the edge of the ring light's glow. Watching. Breathing. I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. The figure took one step forward. Darren screamed. The stream cut out. I don't remember much after that. I remember grabbing Darren's arm, dragging him out the door, running barefoot across the gravel lot to the car. I left half our gear behind, including my laptop. We drove for miles before either of us said a word. When we finally stopped at a diner, Darren turned to me, pale and shaking. "You hired that thing, didn't you?" I shook my head. He didn't believe me. I barely believed myself. The next day, we drove back to the motel during daylight. Room 9 was empty. Our gear was gone. The front desk? Boarded up. Sign read, "Closed for repairs." We asked around. Local coffee shop. Gas station. People looked at us like we were mad. Green Pines? That place has been shut for years. Since the fire. Fire. There was no fire. We were just there. We saw it. Lived in it. But sure enough, I looked it up when we got back home. Green Pines Inn. Closed in 2018. Fire in room 9. 2 guests died. No survivors. I found an old newspaper clipping. Blurry black and white photo. A man and a woman. I couldn't make out their faces. But the shirt the man was wearing, I recognized it. It was mine. We never released the footage. Darren quit the podcast a month later. Moved back to New Hampshire. Doesn't answer my calls. As for me, sometimes late at night my phone buzzes. An email. No subject line. Just a file. .mp4. I click. The video loads. A loop of room 9. 2 men sitting on the bed. One of them turns. Looks at the camera. smiles. And then the whisper starts again. Get out. You ever notice how April Fool's Day always brings out the worst ideas? I mean, yeah, pranks can be fun when you're 12 and sticking ketchup packets under toilet seats. But somewhere along the line, people started thinking it was clever to fake proposals, fake deaths, fake hauntings. The day turned into this weird mix of laughter and low-key emotional terrorism. I should know. I used to be one of those people. For the last 5 years, I'd run a podcast and YouTube channel called Bitter Laughs, a mix of dark humor, weird internet lore, and live stunts. Think Jackass meets creepypasta. My co-host, Darren, and I had made a name pulling pranks on each other that slowly veered into horror territory. Haunted house sleepovers, midnight Ouija games, fake urban legends we'd act out in the woods. It was all harmless. Until April 1st, last year. That was the night I realized that sometimes, when you joke about something long enough, it starts to joke back. The plan was simple. We were going to spend the night at a rundown roadside motel on the outskirts of Vermont, the Green Pines Inn. It hadn't had a Yelp review since 2017. That's how perfect it was. The prank? Make Darren think it was haunted. I'd spent weeks setting it up. Pre-recorded audio of footsteps. Whispers. An old woman's voice repeating, "Get out." I even paid a college drama major $50 to dress in a Victorian dress and peek through the motel window at 2 a.m. Stupid, right? But hilarious. The kicker was this: we'd be live streaming the whole night. No cuts. No edits. Just raw terror. Darren had no idea. He thought we were filming a normal late-night Q&A episode with some light, creepy ambience for the mood. He didn't even know we were headed to a motel until we pulled in. We arrived around 9 p.m. The place looked like it had been carved out of a horror movie. Faded green paint, flickering neon sign with half the letters dead, and a front desk with no one behind it. We rang the bell for 10 minutes before some guy shuffled out from the back in pajamas and a Red Sox cap. Didn't even ask for ID. Just gave us the key to room 9. Room 9. Remember that. The air inside was stale. It smelled like mildew and old socks. The wallpaper was peeling in places. The carpet was stained in others. One of the bedside lamps flickered constantly, like it was trying to tell us something in Morse code. Perfect. We set up the gear, 2 cameras, ring light, audio recorders. By 10:30 p.m., we were live. It started off exactly like we wanted. Jokes. Banter. Reading viewer comments. A few spooky tales from Reddit to warm things up. Then, right on schedule, the first event. At 11:15 p.m., while Darren was mid-sentence, a soft tapping sound started on the wall behind him. 3 knocks. Then silence. He turned, confused. "You hear that?" he asked. I shrugged. "Old building. Could be pipes." He nodded, laughed nervously, and moved on. 30 minutes later, a soft whisper, barely audible, came through the mic. I saw the live chat explode. OMG, who said that? Someone said get out. Rewind to 11:48. I swear that wasn't either of them. Darren was starting to sweat. He kept checking the window, asking if I'd seen someone outside. I hadn't. Or at least, I wasn't supposed to have. But here's where it gets tricky. The next event wasn't mine. At 12:17 a.m., the door to the bathroom creaked open by itself. Now I know what you're thinking, old doors, loose hinges, whatever. But I had rigged that door to stay closed. I'd used a tiny wedge to keep it shut unless physically opened. And no one, not even our actor, was in the room yet. Darren stood up, stared at the door. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice lower now. Less showman, more human. I leaned into the bit. "Maybe it's the ghost of room 9. He didn't laugh. Neither did the chat. At 1:03 a.m., the window, the one I told the actor to approach, started rattling. I grinned. Showtime. But when I turned to look, there was no one there. Just empty glass. No dress. No face. No nothing. I glanced at my phone to message the actor, maybe tell her to go again. No signal. No Wi-Fi. The stream was still going. I could see the camera's live indicator, but we weren't connected to anything. The router was blinking red. Darren stood up, pacing now. "Dude, I think we need to shut this down. I'm not feeling good about this." I tried to calm him, told him it was all just atmosphere. But then the lights cut out. Dark. Just pitch, suffocating black. Our ring light was on battery. It stayed on, casting this pale circle around us, but everything beyond that was swallowed in shadow. That's when the breathing started. Heavy. Wet. Just outside the ring light's reach. coming from the bathroom. Darren was shaking. I could see it in his silhouette. Okay, this isn't funny anymore. I didn't sign up for this. Neither did I, mate. This wasn't the prank. I took a step toward the bathroom, heart pounding. That's when I saw the figure. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't anyone I'd hired. Tall, slouched, skin like wet paper sagging off the face. Hollow eyes. Its mouth hung open, jaw slack like it had forgotten how to close it. It stood in the bathroom doorway, inches from the edge of the ring light's glow. Watching. Breathing. I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. The figure took one step forward. Darren screamed. The stream cut out. I don't remember much after that. I remember grabbing Darren's arm, dragging him out the door, running barefoot across the gravel lot to the car. I left half our gear behind, including my laptop. We drove for miles before either of us said a word. When we finally stopped at a diner, Darren turned to me, pale and shaking. You hired that thing, didn't you? I shook my head. He didn't believe me. I barely believed myself. The next day, we drove back to the motel during daylight. Room 9 was empty. Our gear was gone. The front desk? Boarded up. Sign read closed for repairs. We asked around. Local coffee shop. Gas station. People looked at us like we were mad. Green Pines? That place has been shut for years. Since the fire. Fire. There was no fire. We were just there. We saw it. Lived in it. But sure enough, I looked it up when we got back home. Green Pines Inn. Closed in 2018. Fire in room 9. 2 guests died. No survivors. I found an old newspaper clipping. Blurry black and white photo. A man and a woman. I couldn't make out their faces. But the shirt the man was wearing, I recognized it. It was mine. We never released the footage. Darren quit the podcast a month later. Moved back to New Hampshire. Doesn't answer my calls. As for me, sometimes late at night my phone buzzes. An email. No subject line. Just a file. .mp4. I click. The video loads. A loop of room 9. 2 men sitting on the bed. One of them turns. Looks at the camera. Smiles. And then the whisper starts again. Get out. I used to think going back to your hometown would feel like flipping open an old yearbook. A little awkward. A little warm. Familiar in the way an old coat is, frayed in places, smells like dust, but still fits. But when I went back to Marston, it didn't feel like that. It felt like walking into a room where someone had just left. You can't quite put your finger on it, but the air's too still. Too quiet. Something hangs in the corners. Watching. I was 25. Just out of my post-grad teaching program. Fresh degree, empty savings account, no job offers except one. A temporary sub-position at my old high school. I hadn't planned on returning. I left Marston at 18 and never looked back. But when the principal emailed saying they needed someone to cover 2 months of history while Mr. Eldridge was on medical leave, it felt right. Like fate, if you believe in that sort of thing. I didn't. Not then. The school hadn't changed. Same beige walls. Same bleached-out posters of respect and responsibility. Even the vending machine by the gym still had that permanent, out-of-order sign taped to the glass. Some of the teachers remembered me. Most didn't. But the students? They were different. Not bad. Just muted. Quiet in a way that wasn't normal for high schoolers. They'd answer questions, laugh politely at my bad jokes. But there was this current under it all, like a whisper just below hearing range. Like they were all waiting for something. Or someone. My 3rd day in, I met Harold Price, the janitor. I was in the staff lounge, microwaving leftover lasagna, when he walked in, gray hair, paint-stained overalls, and a limp like he'd just walked off a battlefield. New teacher, he said, not asking. Just stating. I nodded. Just covering for Mr. Eldridge. He stared for a moment, then gave a short nod and walked to the sink. As he filled a mug with hot water, he said, You ever hear about what used to be here before this school? I shook my head. No. Should I have? He shrugged. Maybe. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. But after that, I noticed him more. Always moving slowly through the halls, eyes sharp, like he was waiting to catch something in the act. And every now and then, he'd ask me something strange. You ever hear tapping behind the walls? Notice anything strange with your keys? Kids complain about the basement yet? I laughed it off at first. Chalked it up to boredom or eccentricity. Every school has its oddball staff member, right? But then things started happening. It began with the mirrors. There was one in the staff bathroom, old, smudged, warped at the edges. One afternoon, as I washed my hands, I noticed something strange. My reflection wasn't moving right. It wasn't out of sync, not exactly. But it blinked slower, turned its head a second late, like it was trying to match me, and almost getting it right. I stared for maybe a minute before it caught up. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a glitch in my tired brain, until it happened again, and again. Then came the names. I'd take roll call, and every so often, I'd see a name that shouldn't be there. Griffin Tull. Always last on the list. Always marked present. But when I'd look at the seat number assigned, it was empty. Every time. I asked the front office about it. They said no student by that name was enrolled. Never had been. When I showed them the paper printout, Griffin's name was there. But when I pulled up the digital roster on my laptop, gone. By the third week, I couldn't sleep. I kept having this dream, more like a memory, twisted at the edges. I'm sitting in history class. Mr. Eldridge is lecturing. But it's not his voice. It's mine. I'm the teacher. I look out at the class, and every student is staring at me with black eyes. Empty. Shiny like glass. And then Griffin stands up from the empty seat and says, "I'm ready now." That's when I'd always wake up. Eventually I went to Harold. Caught him cleaning graffiti off a locker near the east stairwell. "I think something's wrong with this place," I said. He didn't look surprised. Just nodded, wiped his rag clean. "You've seen him then?" "Griffin?" Harold nodded slowly. "He shows up every April." I followed him down to the boiler room. We passed an old storage closet I didn't know existed, tucked between two supply rooms, hidden behind a rolling cart. The door was heavy, warped with age. Harold fished out a skeleton key and turned it with a groan. Inside were rows of file boxes. He pulled one off the top shelf, blew off the dust, opened it. Inside was a photo, a class picture. Year, 1977. There, on the far right, was a boy with dark hair and a blank stare. "Griffin Tull," Harold said. "Died in this building. Fell down the boiler shaft during a field trip. No one found him for days." I stared at the photo. His face was slightly smudged, faded like it had been touched too many times. "He doesn't know he's dead," Harold said. "He just keeps coming back, waiting for someone to teach him again." I wanted to run. I should have. But something kept me anchored. That night, I stayed late. Sat in my classroom. Door open. And at 9:07 p.m., the lights flickered. A breeze moved through the hallway, even though every window was shut. And there he was. Seat 31. Back row. A boy with dark hair. Head down. Hands folded. He didn't speak. Neither did I. I stood. Walked to the board. Wrote one sentence. "Today's lesson, how to let go." I spoke for an hour. Talked about history. About death. About how memory fades but meaning doesn't. I don't know what I was saying. I was speaking more to the silence than anything else. And when I turned back, he was gone. Not vanished. Not faded. Just gone. The next day, Griffin's name was no longer on the roster. The mirror worked normally. And Harold nodded at me in the hallway, like we'd just shared a secret. When Mr. Eldridge returned, I packed up my things. He looked tired, older than I remembered, but kind. "Thanks for holding down the fort," he said. I asked if he knew about Griffin. He paused, then said, "There's always a Griffin." I left Marston that week. Took a job 2 towns over. Never looked back. But every April, I check the school's website. Look at the faculty page. The student bulletins. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear a knock on my wall. Right around 9:07 p.m. Just 3 taps. Like someone asking if class is still in session. I got the call just before lunch. I remember because I just reheated last night's pasta and was scrolling through emails, half my brain checked out, when my phone rang with blocked caller ID flashing across the screen. I almost didn't answer. Figured it was a spammer or some scam trying to sell me a cruise to nowhere. But something, I don't know what, made me tap accept. "Mr. Kettering?" The voice was shaky. Young. Nervous. "This is Principal Flores from North Oak Elementary. I need you to come to the school. There's been an incident involving your daughter." My stomach twisted. "What kind of incident?" She wandered off during recess. We couldn't find her. But she's back now." Something in the way she said that. "She's back now." Like the words didn't quite fit. I drove like a madman, barely remembering traffic lights or lane changes. I must have run 3 red lights. I don't even care. When I got to the school, The front office staff didn't make me sign in. Didn't offer a smile or a nod. They just pointed toward the nurse's office, where Principal Flores was waiting with a pale look on her face and hands that wouldn't stop fidgeting. "She's inside," she said. I stepped in. There she was, Maya, sitting cross-legged on the cot, hugging her stuffed bunny, the one that had gone missing months ago, the one we hadn't seen since winter break. Her hair was tied back in the messy ponytail she never liked. Her favorite hoodie, the one with the little cartoon octopus, was spotless. Too spotless. I crouched, looked her in the eye. "Hey, sweet pea. You okay?" She looked at me, smiled. But there was something wrong. It took me a few hours to put my finger on it. She was saying the right things. Her voice sounded right. But she was too calm, too still. Maya is a chatterbox. Always has been. She makes up songs about brushing her teeth and gives the cat 5 nicknames before breakfast. But this version of her just stared out the car window like she was watching something far away. When we got home, she went straight to her room without asking for a snack or turning on the TV. That night, when I tucked her in, I said, "You gave us a real scare, kiddo." "What happened?" She blinked slowly. "I was just walking." "Where?" Her lips twitched into a tiny smile. "Behind the sky." My wife, Dana, wanted to take her to a doctor. I didn't disagree, but something in me hesitated. It wasn't just the weirdness. It was this gut-deep wrongness I couldn't articulate. We ran all the right checks. No signs of physical harm. No signs of trauma. She didn't cry. Didn't ask where we were. She just existed, like a photograph of herself. Then came the first night. I woke around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of humming. I thought maybe Dana had left the TV on. But it was Maya's voice. Soft, slow, a lullaby I didn't recognize. The words were in a language I didn't know. Something old and wet sounding, like whispers underwater. I stood in the hallway, heart thumping. The hum wrapped around me like cold silk. I opened the door. She was sitting up in bed, eyes wide open, still humming. When I stepped into the room, she stopped instantly. Laid down, closed her eyes, like she hadn't moved at all. The next morning, I asked her about the song. She just smiled. "It's from the place where the shadows live." Over the next week, things got worse. She wouldn't eat her favorite cereal. Said it was too bright. Refused to go near the bathroom mirror. Said she didn't like the other Maya looking at her. She drew pictures in crayon, jagged landscapes with black suns and stick figures floating upside down. Dana cried one night. Whispered, "That's not our daughter." And I wanted to argue. But I couldn't. Because I was starting to believe it too. The breaking point came on the 10th night. We were eating dinner, Maya barely touching her plate, when she suddenly looked up and said, flat and cold, "Someone else is wearing you." Dana dropped her fork. "What?" Maya tilted her head. "I see him sometimes. The other dad. He's like you, but his eyes are too far apart." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She looked me straight in the face. "I think he wants your skin." We didn't sleep that night. We tried to pretend things were okay. We tried to be rational. But deep down we knew. This wasn't a phase. It wasn't trauma. This wasn't Maya. I started going through her things, desperate to find something that explained any of it. That's when I found the photo. In her backpack. Folded, old, grainy. It was a picture of a playground. Familiar. Our town's park, but older. Rusted swings, crumbling merry-go-round. But at the edge of the photo, a girl. Back turned. Same hoodie. Same ponytail. But the photo was dated, April 3rd, 1984. I confronted her. She didn't deny it. "It's where I came back," she said. "I waited in the quiet place. I followed the humming. And then they told me how to find you. We called a child psychologist. A priest. Even a paranormal investigator I found online. Someone with a blurry website and too many pop-ups. No one helped. They all left with the same excuse. She's under stress. She's imaginative. Kids go through phases." No. Kids don't smile when they bleed. That's what happened on April 8th. She tripped on the porch and skinned her knee. She just stared at it, blood trickling down her leg, and smiled. Like she was curious. Like she was watching someone else's body fall apart. We tried to stay strong. But the truth had already sunk in. Whatever came back wasn't our daughter. April 11th, 3:33 a.m. I woke up to Maya standing at the foot of our bed. Staring. Smiling. Her mouth opened wider than I thought possible. Too wide. Like something inside her was stretching the skin from underneath. "Thank you for letting me stay," she whispered. The other one was so tired. "What do you want?" I asked, barely able to speak. She tilted her head. To be real, I don't know what happened next. I blacked out. Or dreamed it. In the morning, Maya was gone. Her bed empty. Her toys untouched. We called the police. They searched the house, the woods, the park. Nothing. We showed them the photo. They didn't believe us. Of course they didn't. They never do. Weeks passed. Dana left for her sisters. I stayed behind. Waiting. Listening. Because sometimes, in the dead hours of night, I still hear her. That low humming. That not quite right lullaby. Coming from behind the mirror. I've never been a fan of April Fool's Day. Don't get me wrong. I can laugh at a well-placed prank. A fake meeting invite. A keyboard wrapped in cling film. I get it. But I've never liked being the joke. Which is why on April 1st last year, I kept my head down. I didn't say much. I didn't respond to the group chat where Kyle from IT was already plotting something legendary. I just wanted the day to end. It had been a long month. Budget cuts. Late nights. The kind of slow death projects that get passed around until they land on your desk like a ticking bomb. So I stayed late that night. Again. Everyone else had gone by 7 o'clock. I watched the office empty out in waves. Developers first, marketing stragglers, then finally the HR girl who always left behind the scent of lemon tea. By 8:45, it was just me, my screen, and the low hum of a building pretending to sleep. The office was on the 14th floor of a high-rise downtown. A box of glass and metal that tried to disguise how dead inside it really was. The kind of building that was designed to be forgettable. I liked that about it. It didn't ask for attention. It just stood there, quietly swallowing the best hours of your life. That night, I wrapped up a stack of reports, emailed them off, and finally powered down at 10:18 p.m. I packed my bag, slung my coat over one shoulder, and made my way down the long corridor toward the elevators. That's when I noticed it. The silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that feels intentional. No hum of vending machines. No soft buzz of ceiling lights. Just the sound of my own footsteps. I pressed the elevator button. The light blinked on. But the elevator didn't come. I waited. 10 seconds. Then 30. Still nothing. I pressed again. This time, the light flickered, almost like it was stuttering. Then the doors slid open with a slow, reluctant hiss. The interior was darker than usual. One of the lights overhead was out, leaving a soft pool of shadow in the back corner. I stepped inside. Hit L for lobby. The doors closed, and the elevator began to move. Sort of. It was slower than usual. Not broken, but dragging. Like the cables were too tired to care. I watched the numbers above the door. 13. 12. 11. Then nothing. No sound. No movement. Just a soft flicker of the overhead light. I looked up at the numbers again. Still on 11. I pressed L again. Then open door. Nothing happened. I tapped the emergency call button. A brief crackle. Then silence. And then a voice. But it wasn't the emergency line. It wasn't even a voice I recognized. Just a soft, distant whisper, almost lost in static. You shouldn't be here. I stepped back, heart suddenly pounding. This was a prank. Had to be. Maybe Kyle rigged the elevator audio. Maybe this was the legendary office joke he'd been working on. Very funny, I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady. You got me. No response. The light above me pulsed once. Then again. Then everything went black. I froze. Total darkness. No elevator hum. No distant machinery. Just the sound of my breath and the tight walls closing in. I pulled out my phone. No service. Not even emergency calls. I turned on the flashlight. The beam bounced weakly off the metallic walls. I aimed it at the floor buttons. They were blank. Not worn. Not scratched. Blank. No numbers. No text. Just smooth metal circles. Like the panel had never been labeled. I don't know how long I stood there, trying to breathe. But eventually the elevator jolted, like something had kicked it from underneath, and started moving again. Not down. Up. Faster this time. The numbers reappeared. But they weren't normal. Not 14. 15. 16. Just symbols. A triangle. Then a circle. Then a symbol I didn't recognize. A jagged line through a crescent moon. The doors opened. It wasn't the lobby. It wasn't the office. It was something else. I stepped out slowly. The hallway was long, narrow, and wrong. Ceiling too low. Floor carpeted in a dull pattern that shifted when I blinked. The lights above buzzed like they were underwater. Every door was labeled with numbers that didn't make sense. Room 0. Room -1. Room Echo. I turned back to the elevator, but the doors had already closed, and there was no button to call it back. I walked. Carefully. Slowly. Each step felt heavier. The air was thick. Not hot, not cold, just dense, like breathing in someone else's dream. One door stood ajar. Room 404. I pushed it open. Inside was a perfect replica of my cubicle. Same mug. Same stress ball. Same picture of me and my dad at the Cubs game from 5 years ago. But the monitor was on. The screen displayed a live feed of me, standing in that room, watching myself. Then the camera panned, and I saw something else behind me. Something tall. Something with too many joints. I turned. Nothing there. I ran. Down the hallway. Past doors labeled with words that made my head hurt. Wait. Return. Niverm. The hallway didn't end. It just curved in on itself, folding like a loop. I passed the same water cooler 3 times. Same flickering exit sign with the letters reversed. Then I heard it. A voice. Calm. Mechanical. You've been here too long. I turned a corner and saw another elevator. Old. Rusted. Buttons exposed like torn wires. Above the door. Sub 3. I didn't care. I hit the button. The doors creaked open. Inside, the floor was wet. No light. Just that same low breathing sound. I stepped in. The doors shut. It didn't move. I waited. Then the elevator spoke. You are not authorized to exit. I hit every button. No response. Then the breathing got louder. Closer. Something shifted in the darkness above me. A shape. A face without features. Just smooth skin and eyes that opened without blinking. I slammed my fists on the panel. Screamed. Then a bell dinged. The doors opened. I was back in the lobby. Empty. Silent. No guards. No staff. Just a flickering fluorescent and the smell of dust. I stumbled out. Ran for the doors. Outside, the street was dark. No cars. No people. The world muted. But real. Or close enough. The next day I quit. No explanation. I never went back to that building. Never rode in another elevator alone. And every April 1st since then, I get an email. No subject. Just a timestamp. 10:18 p.m. And a message. We're still waiting. I've never believed in cursed places. I think people like the idea of haunted spots. Old hospitals, train tunnels, the usual suspects. It gives shape to fear, a location you can point to and say, that's where the bad thing lives. But after what happened at Hollow Storage, I've changed my mind. Because there was nothing special about that place. Until it decided to open. It started with a phone call. I'd inherited the facility from my Uncle Rick, who passed last February. Hollow Storage sat on the edge of Ashland, Missouri, just far enough from town to be inconvenient, just old enough to smell like dust even in photos. I barely remembered the place. Visited it once as a kid. Rick lived in a trailer behind the chain-link fence and ran the whole thing himself. He was one of those loner types with a soft spot for stray cats and old radios. When he died, the lawyer said he left the whole business to me, including whatever the hell was inside Unit 118. I didn't even know Unit 118 existed. The official ledger didn't list it. The paperwork jumped from 117 to 119. No maps, no logs, no rent history. But when I flew in that April to start the clean-out, I found the unit. Way in the back row. Rusty door. Lock rusted shut. No number on it, just a faint scratch, like something had tried to carve its way out. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I spent the morning clearing out cobwebs, throwing out broken furniture and water-stained boxes. The whole place felt tired. The kind of tired you don't fix with a paint job. By noon, I found myself standing in front of that door. Unit 118. The lock crumbled after one good pull. The door didn't creak. It groaned. And behind it, darkness. Not shadow. Not dim light. Just dark. I clicked on my flashlight and stepped inside. The air was wrong. Heavy. Still. It smelled like wet stone and something sweeter, like old flowers rotting in a jar. The walls were bare concrete. But the floor wasn't. It was dirt. Fresh, loose dirt. Like someone had dug it up recently. I walked slowly. Quietly. About 10 feet in, my boot hit something hard. Metal. I knelt. Brushed away the soil. It was a handle. Like the kind on a trapdoor. I hesitated, then pulled. The ground gave way, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel sloping downward, cut clean through the earth, reinforced with rotting wood beams. I should have left right then. I know that now. But something about it called to me. So I climbed down. The tunnel wasn't long, maybe 20 feet. The temperature dropped with every step. The flashlight flickered once, then steadied. I emerged into a chamber. Man-made. Walls carved smooth. Floor flattened. A small bench against one side, made from stacked stone. And on the far wall markings. Not writing. Not symbols I recognized. Just deep, spiraling gouges that seemed to pulse when I looked directly at them. In the center of the chamber, a figure. Kneeling. Back turned. I froze. Hello? No response. I stepped closer. The figure was made of cloth and wood. A crude doll, human-sized, arms wrapped around its chest. Its face was stitched shut. Something was carved into its chest. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, rasping. From behind me. I turned. Nothing there. When I looked back, the doll had moved. Only a little, just an inch closer to the wall. But enough. Enough to know I had to leave. Now. I climbed back up, heart hammering, vision tunneling. The tunnel seemed longer. The incline steeper. The air thicker. By the time I emerged into the unit, the door had shut. And I couldn't open it. I screamed. Pounded. Kicked. Eventually it gave. But the daylight had dimmed. Hours had passed. Or maybe days. I locked Unit 118. Welded it shut. And I left. I didn't care about the inheritance. The land. The business. I flew home. Tried to forget. But a week later, I got a package. No return address. Inside, a small cloth doll. Arms wrapped around its chest. Stitched mouth. Tag on its foot. You forgot something. I burned it. But that night, I woke up to the sound of breathing beside my bed. And a whisper. There's still room in 118. I sold the property. It's listed now as vacant land. But sometimes people email me. Random strangers. They say they parked near the fence at Hollow Storage and heard something underground. One woman sent a photo. It was of her car's dusty rear window. 4 numbers written perfectly. 0118. If you ever find yourself outside Ashland, Missouri, don't go near the back row. And if you do, don't open the door. You never expect a sunny day to end in a nightmare. It was April 2nd. The sky was wide open, blue enough to feel like everything was finally thawing from winter. My little brother Milo had just turned 10, and our mom decided we all needed fresh air after months of Netflix and microwave dinners. So we went to the park. One of those spread out, half-wild places with woods on one end and a river cutting through the middle. The kind of park that feels too big to ever know completely. We brought a frisbee. Milo brought his favorite hoodie, the green one with the dinosaur tail on the hood. He said it made him run faster. For the first hour, everything was normal, until Milo disappeared. I was on my phone. I hate saying that, but it's the truth. One moment he was throwing leaves at the riverbank, laughing about something in the water. The next he was gone. Vanished. No scream. No rustle. No, hey, look at this. Just gone. We searched the entire park. Called his name until our voices broke. Rangers showed up. Police. Drones. Helicopters. They found his shoe near a storm drain at the edge of the woods. Wide enough for a child to crawl through. I knew in my gut that's where he went. I also knew no one was going to follow him. So I did. The next morning, before the sun came up, I went back. The drain was still uncovered, black and yawning like a mouth left open too long. I brought a headlamp, rope, my phone, and a thermos of coffee. I didn't leave a note. I just crawled inside. It started as a tight squeeze, the kind that makes your breath shallow. The kind that forces you to confront how much noise your own body makes. Every breath, every shift of cloth, every heartbeat. After about 10 feet, the tunnel opened wider. And it split. Left or right. I chose left. I don't know why. Maybe I heard something. Maybe I just hoped he'd gone that way. The tunnel sloped downward. The air grew colder. Damp. My phone stopped getting signal after 20 minutes. The flashlight flickered once, but held steady. I kept walking. It stopped feeling like a sewer after a while. The walls became too smooth. The air too dry. No water, no dripping, no smell of rot. It felt hollow, like walking through a place that had been emptied of sound. That's when I started seeing the footprints. Tiny. Bare. Space like someone was walking slowly, deliberately, and every so often smeared handprints. On the walls. Kid-sized. I followed them. Of course I did. Wouldn't you? I passed doorways. Not tunnels, doorways. Rectangular openings carved into the walls, each leading to a small square chamber, like storage rooms. Some were empty. Others had things inside them. A tricycle with no wheels. A stack of VHS tapes labeled in red ink. A collection of shoes, all children's sizes, lined up perfectly. Each room colder than the last. I didn't go in. At some point, I realized I hadn't checked the time in hours. My thermos was cold. My legs were shaking. But the prints continued. And now they were joined by something else. Scrapes. As if something had been dragged behind. Not beside. Behind. The tunnel narrowed again. I crouched lower. The air was buzzing now. Not loud, not constant. Just a faint hum, like an old refrigerator buried miles below. And then I saw it. A faint glow. Green-blue. Pulse-like. Coming from an open space ahead. I turned off my headlamp. Crawled forward. The chamber was huge. Round. Vaulted. A dome of smooth stone and roots hanging like hair from above. And in the center, a pool. Still. Glassy. Glowing faintly from below. Milo was standing at the edge. I whispered his name. He didn't react. Just stared into the water, motionless. I ran to him. Grabbed his arm. His skin was ice cold. His eyes were open, but unfocused. Like he wasn't seeing what was in front of him. Milo, I whispered. Please. Let's go. He turned his head. Slowly. Smiled. I found the voice, he said. What? It hums. You just have to listen. He pointed to the pool. I heard it calling. It said I could stay. I looked into the water. And I saw myself. But not my reflection. My body. Floating. Still. Eyes open. Mouth slightly agape. And something dark curling out of it, like smoke underwater. I stumbled back. The hum grew louder. And Milo took a step forward. I grabbed him. Pulled. He fought back, but not violently. More like he didn't understand why I was stopping him. Like I was the one breaking the rules. I just wanted to be quiet for a while, he whispered. I don't know how I got us out. My memory fractures after that. I remember screaming. The walls vibrating. The tunnels shifting. I remember carrying him. Upward. Choking on the air. Falling. Clawing through mud. When I came to, we were in the riverbed. It was dawn. Birds chirping. Sunlight breaking through. Milo was beside me. Breathing. Eyes closed like he'd just napped. They didn't believe me. Of course they didn't. The rangers said maybe he wandered and passed out. Dehydration. Minor hypothermia. No signs of trauma. But he never talks about it. Not once. And neither do I. Except for this. Every April we hear it again. The hum. At night. Soft and deep, from under the floorboards. Milo sits up in bed when it starts. He hums back. I asked him once if he remembers anything. He nodded. Then said, it was peaceful. But the voice said I couldn't stay. Not yet. Sometimes I dream about that chamber. Sometimes I see more people there. Kids. Adults. All standing at the edge. Looking down. Listening. Waiting for the voice to say yes. I remember the first time I saw the substitute. It was the first Monday after spring break, April 7th, if I'm being exact, and everyone was still bleary-eyed from a week of sleeping in and forgetting math existed. Our regular teacher, Mr. Kessler, hadn't returned. No one explained why. No assembly. No phone call to the parents. He was just gone, and in his place stood Mr. Lyle. He wasn't dressed like a teacher. Dark suit. No tie. Black shoes that didn't squeak, no matter how quiet the room got. He had this calm, deliberate way of moving, like everything was rehearsed. But the first thing that really struck me was this. No one saw him come in. One moment the room was empty. The next, there he was, sitting at the desk, smiling. He didn't take attendance. Didn't hand out a syllabus. Just stood up, walked to the board and wrote, "What do you remember?" Then turned to us and said, "That'll be our focus for the week." Most of the class played along. We were juniors. Cynical. Bored. Used to strange subs who didn't last more than 2 days. But Mr. Lyle stayed. Day after day. Week after week. He never raised his voice. Never lost his place. And yet somehow, none of us could remember what he taught. We'd sit there for an hour, fully alert, fully awake, and leave with nothing. No notes. No quizzes. No memory of what he said. And then slowly other things started slipping. I noticed it first in Sarah, the girl who sat to my right. On April 10th, she turned to me during class and said, "Hey, what's your name again?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. But she wasn't. She looked genuinely confused. Like I was a stranger. Then it was Marcus. Then Dina. Then almost half the class. Small things first. Forgetting their passwords. Their birthdays. The names of teachers they'd had for years. Then it got worse. They started forgetting where they lived. Who they were related to. What day it was. I tried to report it. Went to the counselor's office, explained everything, Mr. Lyle, the memory gaps, the way kids were unraveling. She smiled politely, took notes, and then asked, "Which teacher did you say again?" I repeated his name, and she frowned. "We don't have a Mr. Lyle on staff." I went back to class, heart thumping, hands shaking. He was there. Of course he was. Standing by the board. He turned as I entered and smiled. But this time the smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out old yearbooks. Searched the faculty photos. Nothing. No Mr. Lyle. I texted my friends. Most didn't respond. The ones who did, didn't remember him at all. Or me. I looked at myself in the mirror. Said my name out loud. Over and over. Because I was starting to forget it too. The next day, only 6 students showed up. 6. In a class of 26. The rest gone. Their desks empty. Their names absent from the roster. As if they'd never been there. I whispered to the girl sitting nearest, "Where's Sarah?" She stared at me blankly. "Who?" Mr. Lyle began the lesson by writing a new phrase on the board. "We are what we forget." Then he turned around, hands folded. "Today," he said, "we will talk about shedding. Not just memories, but all that weighs us down." Nobody asked questions. Nobody took notes. They just listened. Like they couldn't do anything else. After class, I stayed behind. Told him I wanted to talk. He smiled. "Of course," he said. "You've been doing so well." "What is this?" I asked. "What are you doing to everyone?" He tilted his head, like I'd asked about the weather. "I'm helping. They're remembering too much. The burden of identity. The trap of narrative." He leaned closer. "Don't you feel lighter already?" I ran. Out the building. Past the parking lot. I didn't go home. I didn't know where home was anymore. That night, I checked my phone. No contacts. No photos. No call history. Like I'd never used it before. The next morning, I didn't go to school. But at 10:07 a.m., I got a text. "You're late. Class waits for you." We all do. Attached was a photo. The classroom. Empty, except for one desk. Mine. I don't know how much longer I lasted. A few more days, maybe. Each morning, fewer students. Each day, more silence. Until one Friday, I walked into class, and I was the only one left. Mr. Lyle smiled. "Now," he said, "we begin." I don't remember the lesson. I don't remember what happened next. But I woke up on a park bench, April 30th. Alone. Backpack gone. ID gone. All I had was a notebook in my lap. Blank, except for one phrase, written in red ink. "You've graduated." That was a year ago. I still don't know my full name. But I write it down every morning. I keep photos pinned to my wall. Names scribbled beneath them. Because forgetting isn't painless. It's slow. And it feels good. Like dissolving in warm water. But I fight it. Every day. Sometimes I hear from others. A message here. A drawing in a book left on a bench. A carved name on a bus seat. We remember just enough. Enough to know he's still out there. Teaching. Waiting. Smiling. If you ever sit in a classroom and find yourself forgetting what came before. If your classmates start disappearing. If your teacher's name was never on the door. Leave. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't try to remember. There's a house 3 doors down from mine that no one talks about. It's not boarded up or covered in graffiti. No for sale sign. No obvious decay. It just exists. Like a placeholder. When people walk their dogs past it, they cross the street. Kids don't ride their bikes near it. The mailman never stops there, even though the mailbox is intact. And if you ask someone on the block who lives there, they hesitate. Like the answer used to be there. But it slipped away. I moved to Harrow Lane last March. Needed something quieter. I just lost my job, my partner had left, and I couldn't afford to keep living in the city. This house, tiny, boxy, oddly cheap, was a lifeline. I thought the street was peaceful. It took me 3 weeks to notice the hollow place. April 3rd, 11:11 p.m. I was brushing my teeth, half listening to a podcast, when I saw movement outside the window. At first I thought it was wind, but the branches weren't moving. The light on the porch flickered, the one that had never been on before. And then, just barely visible in the window of that house, a figure. Still. Watching. I tried to wave. Then stopped. Something felt off. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just absent. Like it was watching the way a recording watches. Not because it's interested. Just because it's there. By the time I looked again, the window was empty. And the porch light was off. That night, I dreamed of the house. But it was wider. Deeper. Like a trick of perspective had been lifted. Inside, it had too many rooms. Hallways that curved in impossible directions. Doors that opened to black. The dream felt long. And when I woke up, my sheets were damp. Like I'd been sweating for hours. It was 3:07 a.m. The next day, I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Alden, about it. She was watering her flowers, the same way she did every morning. Perfectly symmetrical rows of marigolds and violets. Who lives in 173? She didn't look up. What house? I gestured down the street. She frowned. Blinked. Then said, There is number 173. That night, I walked past it. Just to be sure. There was a 173. Painted above the door. Weathered brass numbers. I stood at the edge of the driveway and stared. There were lights on inside. Faint. Like the kind you leave on in a hotel room, warm, low, static. I thought about knocking. Then the door opened. No sound. Just a slow swing inward. I stood frozen. At the threshold, just inside, I saw the edge of a staircase. It didn't go up. It went down. And I swear, I heard something breathing. Not in fear. Not in pain. Just waiting. I ran home. Didn't sleep. Every hour, I checked the window. The porch light never came back on. On April 5th, a man showed up at the house. I saw him through my blinds. Middle-aged. Gray coat. Carrying a suitcase. He didn't knock. He just walked inside. The door shut behind him. I watched for 5 hours. He never came back out. The next morning, the suitcase was on the porch. Empty. That afternoon, I called the town records office. Asked about 173 Harrow Lane. They transferred me twice. Finally, a woman came on the line with a voice like wet gravel. There is no such property, she said. But I'm looking at it right now. A pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. If you can see it, you've already gone too far. I started to change. I didn't leave the house much anymore. Didn't check my email. Stopped answering phone calls. All I wanted was to understand the hollow place. On April 11th, I crossed the street again. Went back to the house. 173 Harrow Lane. I knocked. The door creaked open. This time no lights. Just darkness and a smell like damp stone. I stepped inside. The hallway stretched longer than the house should allow. I passed rooms that weren't rooms, spaces shaped like memories. A hospital bed with a radio playing softly. A classroom with no desks, just rows of mirrors. A hallway lined with framed photographs of people with blurred faces. And everywhere, the sound of something moving just out of sight. I found the staircase again, still leading down. But now there was a voice. Low. Echoing. Saying my name. Over. And over. I descended. Each step felt wrong, too soft. Like the stairs weren't meant to support weight. At the bottom, the space opened wide. Like a cathedral underground. Pillars carved from the same dark stone as the stairs. And in the center, a door. No handle. No keyhole. Just a single word carved above it. Stay. I reached out. Touched the surface. The stone was warm. Then the voice behind me said, If you open it, you'll never come back. I turned. And saw myself. Standing in the dark. But older. Eyes sunken. Skin pale. Wearing the same clothes I'd worn the night I first saw the house. I ran. Back up the stairs. Through the too long hallway. Out the door. Back home. It's April 30th now. The house is gone. Vanished. Where it stood, there's a gap, not a ruin, not a crater. Just a hole in the map. Neighbors act like nothing was ever there. Even my phone's GPS skips that part of the street. But I remember. And I know it's not over. Because sometimes when the night is still, I hear a knock on my door. And when I open it, no one's there. Just a faint, familiar voice. Saying, We have a place for you.